Whenever a company is competing in the marketplace, especially when they're competing in a market they're completely foreign to, it's important that they distinguish themselves from the competition. Universal, when they debuted their first park in Florida back in the 90s, they had to compete with a company who already had their roots planted in the area for the last 20 years. While Disney World, they were a juggernaut. They had a stranglehold on the Orlando market. Actually, Disney, they created the Orlando market. They are the reason why Orlando is such a hotspot for tourism. Magic Kingdom, it's still the most popular theme park in the world, even though it opened back in 1971. Later on, in the 1980s, the Walt Disney Company, they debuted Epcot Center, their second theme park, and then later on, in 1989, they opened their third theme park with MGM Studios, a park whose whole existence was meant to spite Universal. When the heads up at Disney found out that Universal was going to set up shop on their territory, they knew they had to try and get ahead of the game by opening another theme park of their own, one that was very similar in principle to Universal's, considering that the entire park was based around the magic of movie making, with a backlot feel. The point is that when Universal they moved in across the street from Disney, it's clear that they wanted a piece of the pie. They wanted some of those Orlando tourist dollars. However, they needed a way to differentiate themselves from Disney. They couldn't just be another movie theme park in Orlando, no. They had to prove to the marketplace that they were different enough from their competitors. Instead of having their parks appeal to just families and kids, Universal would appeal to teens and young adults. Essentially, they wanted to target an older demographic. And on some level, with the original studio park, they succeeded with this, but they really elevated the game with their second park, Islands. This park, compared to Studios, was really geared for an adult market, the thrill-seeker market. When the park opened, their two headlining attractions were The Incredible Hulk and Dueling Dragons, both high-thrill, high-intensity attractions. The Incredible Hulk, it was a sit-down looper, and Dueling Dragons was a pair of inverts. These were two coasters that you would never find at a Disney park, and that's what distinguished Universal. They carved out their own unique niche, and it's worked for them ever since. These coasters were not a one-off thing, because in 2021 we got Velocicoaster, a ride that was considered to be one of the best roller coasters in the world, and then it was completely one-upped this year when Universal debuted Stardust Racers. Oh, that ride is so good, and I finally got a duel, so now I can stop punching myself over it. Universal, they're going to continue the strategy of building Cedar Point-esque roller coasters at their properties for the foreseeable future, and I'm all for it. I mean, they're already well underway on their next high-thrill roller coaster with the Ghostbusters coaster, and yes, I am still considering this to be the Ghostbusters coaster. This is the theme I want this ride to be. Sorry, Fast and Furious fans, I really do not want this to be Fast and Furious. Please, Universal, don't give Vin Diesel control. We can't have that. But despite what the theme of the ride is going to be, there's no doubt in my mind that this coaster, it's gonna be amazing. Who knows if it will be better than Stardust? I'm sure hoping that it will. I love how Universal, they just keep topping themselves. But even if it's not, it's still gonna be world class. And who's to say that Universal, they're gonna stop after this? The fans, they enjoy these rides. The public, they're responding well. So there's not much of a reason to alter Universal's strategy. However, I do have a few lingering questions. Not negative questions, just observational ones. For one, how come all of the new roller coasters at Universal are short? Not a single coaster nor structure at Universal reaches the 200-foot barrier. Seriously, how come not a single roller coaster goes above 200 feet? Universal, they obviously know how to build a proper roller coaster. Their new ones are flawless. So it surprises me that they never even attempt to break any records. Not even gimmicky records, like tallest, steepest, fastest dive coaster or something dumb like that. No, Universal's marketing team, they focus more on the theme of the ride than the overall stats. For example, when Velocicoaster was announced, I don't remember any records being attached to the coaster. The ride was just referred to as the apex predator of coasters, not tallest, steepest ride that also features a Mosasaurus roll. Universal, they don't do any of this Six Flags marketing BS, but I'm curious to why they've never at least tried. Universal, they have the resources to build bigger and taller roller coasters. They could easily construct a ride over 200 feet, even 300 feet. A gig at Universal would go pretty hard. But Universal chooses not to do this. How come? Why does their tallest coaster cap at 155 feet when they have enough capital to go higher? Well, there are a few reasons for why Universal would never build a 200-foot coaster, and a lot of it has to do with sightlines. Universal, they have a simple business philosophy. They're a theme park company, so they strive for immersion. And 200-foot coasters that can be seen from any corner of their parks kind of takes you out of that immersion. Like, how would a ride like Velocicoaster appear at Islands of Adventure, specifically in the Harry Potter section, if it was 200 feet? It probably wouldn't look too good, especially when you're trying to integrate yourself within the Wizarding World, and all you can see is a top hat for a roller coaster. I can imagine that if this hypothetical was reality, the land wouldn't be as immersive anymore. Nowadays, whenever a Universal park wants to build a new roller coaster, they have to make sure that the existing sight lines aren't encroached upon. Is this a finite rule Universal has to abide by? Not exactly. Universal, they are considerate about existing sightlines. However, exceptions can be made, like at Epic Universe. Universal, I will definitely say that they tried their best keeping each land contained within their own realm. However, I would be lying if I said they mastered this technique, because they definitely didn't. There are some glaring sightline problems within Epic Universe. In some of the lands, like Dark Universe or How to Train Your Dragon, you can definitely see some of the other attractions within the park. If I'm standing in How to Train Your Dragon and I'm viewing the Spire within Isle of Berk, then you better believe that I'm also viewing Stardust Racers and the Helios. If I'm in Dark Universe, I can also see the Helios. If I'm in Celestial Park, Super Nintendo World, it'll stick out like a sore thumb. There is no way I can avert my gaze away from the Green Wall. I'm aware that some of these sightline issues will go away over time. After all, a lot of the trees here are new, they will grow with age and block the obscenities, but this won't excuse all of the sightline issues. So if sightlines are sometimes a give or take with Universal, then how come they won't build a 200-foot coaster? A concern that I had was maybe Universal had to deal with some FAA height restrictions, since they are in near close proximity with MCO, but this doesn't seem to be the case. I can't find anything on the FAA website to corroborate this, so to mine and your understanding, there is no height restriction imposed upon Universal. Could it be that Universal, they want to take a Disney approach and not go over 200 feet because they don't want to put a flashing light or beacon on top of these roller coasters? Disney, they choose not to go over 200 feet because they feel that putting a blinking light on top of their rides will take away from the immersion and theming. So for a lot of their structures, they decide to go below the 200-foot mark, usually at 199, so they can slightly scoot around FAA regulations. Could this justification be the same for Universal? I suppose it can, but it'd be pretty weird if it was. Because how is a blinking light gonna take away from the immersion of a roller coaster? These are abstract steel structures. A blinking light isn't gonna be a deal breaker. So the only reason I can possibly think of why Universal doesn't want to go over 200 feet is sightlines. Again, I can't think of any other reason. Could it also be land capacity? Is that it? Sure, this could be another factor. Lack of space has been an issue for Universal before, but if they have the right conditions and just enough space, they usually can get around this hurdle. So it has to be the sightline problem, right? I mean, sightlines is one of the main reasons for why I think a ride like the Ghostbusters coaster isn't gonna be too tall. Because its predecessor, Hollywood Rip Ride Rocket, it was a very ugly roller coaster that jutted into the Universal skyline, and you could see it from pretty much anywhere. From Seuss Landing to the queue in Hagrid's, there it was, Hollywood Rip Ride Rocket and its nasty-ass industrial lift hill. So when Universal does begin to go vertical on the Ghostbusters coaster, don't be too surprised when it's shorter than Rip Ride. This coaster is an opportunity for Universal to do some course correcting, and fixing the skyline was likely a major consideration. But in the end, why does this even matter? Why do I care if Universal builds a 200 or 300 foot coaster? They're doing well enough as it is. Their new coasters are elite. I have no complaints, so why am I harping so much on this 200 foot barrier? Well, I'll tell you why. If Universal doesn't want to build a coaster over 200 feet, then that means they will never build the Back to the Future coaster. Yep, that's where this has all been leading to. Me whining about Universal not building a Back to the Future roller coaster. I'm sorry, but I really want this to happen. A Back to the Future roller coaster would do wonders for Universal, and I'm shocked that they haven't done this yet. And they're still not doing this. What is the reason why? Well, I'll tell you why. It's because of the height. Think about it, if Universal were to build a Back to the Future roller coaster, there's a few criteria they would need to meet. Mainly that the ride would need to go 88 miles per hour. Because why wouldn't it? It's the most obvious thing to do. you need to make the DeLorean go 88 miles an hour to make it feel authentic. The issue is, if Universal did make a Back to the Future roller coaster going this fast, then the ride it would have to be tall to account for this. Roller coasters that go fast tend to be taller, and vice versa. And this is for a pretty good reason. If you have a roller coaster traveling at 88 miles per hour, then you gotta burn off all that kinetic energy with potential energy, i.e. by going high. Now, if you don't want to build tall, but you still want to retain that initial speed of 88, then you would have to make the roller coaster more sprawled out. Kind of like a coaster like Formula Rosa, where most of it is low to the ground. This approach, though, it requires a lot more land, something Universal doesn't exactly have. They can't be loose and free with the space they own. So if Universal were to build an 88 mile per hour, 200 plus foot Back to the Future roller coaster, it would be very imposing. Whether they built it at studios, islands, Epic, it wouldn't matter. You would see it from any location on property. The best alternative would be placing this kind of a ride within a completely new theme park, one that takes the time and energy to account for a ride of this caliber, somewhat like the supposed Back to the Future roller coaster going to Universal Great Britain. That coaster, it appears like it's going to be 200 plus feet, and it seems like Universal, they're doing their best to integrate it within the skyline. Will the ride have a presence? Absolutely, but if Universal can blend it in correctly, then it won't matter. Could they do the same for Florida? Theoretically, yes, but it would be a challenge. It's easier to start from scratch than working with what's already there. Will an elusive 200-foot coaster ever go to Universal Florida? As of now, nah, that's not even remotely on the table. But you know what? Universal, they're doing fine. They don't need a Hyper, they don't need a Giga. Velocicoaster and Stardust are already everything I want out of a roller coaster. Height would be nothing more than a bonus. The only reason I would want a 200 plus is so we can get Back to the Future. But as of now, that's not happening.